Recording in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hi everyone, welcome to the Blessed with Hope podcast, and on today's episode we're going to be talking about the year of trust. But before I begin, I want to thank you all for listening to these episodes, watching these episodes, and just engaging with these episodes in general. It gives me encouragement to continue doing the good works of God. And I know I'm not here to please you, but I'm here to please God instead. But it's a nice added bonus that you guys are engaging with all my videos. It brightens my day, and it just lets me to know that God's doing a thing in this podcast. But I just want to give a quick shout out to you guys and thank you all for everything that you do. It puts a smile on my face, and it's just amazing to see what God can do. But let's dive into the episode now. So in today's episode, we're going to be talking about specifically this one year where I never saw a way out, and that was back in 2021. That was a year where things were changing and the year I truly needed to depend on God. Many things happened that year that my trust for God changed so drastically that I believe He can do anything and that His promises never fail. So to get started, let's start from the beginning. Trusting in God is not easy at first, but as you continue your journey with Him, He will allow certain situations to happen to you to show you that He was always right there with you. That journey of trust for me began in August of 2021. Being obedient to God is very important. You may not see why you are doing what you're doing now, but later at the end is when He will reveal to you why you had to go through certain situations. For me, it was a beginning of the school year back in 2021, and God had told me that I would be living in my own apartment alone. That for me was exciting, but at the same time, looking at my finances, I didn't have the budget for it. As always, God said not to worry. So I stood in my faith and I started searching for apartments. I looked through various apartments and only one stood out to me. I gave the apartment a call multiple times, and eventually I set an appointment to go see the apartment. My parents and I drove down and took a tour of different units, and the one I saw online was the one I heard to get. We toured the one I heard was it, and it was it. I knew right then and there as I stepped inside that this was the apartment for me. It was perfect. After talking to my parents, I submitted an application and got accepted. Before continuing the story, I want to let you know that everything that I just said so far was completely new to me at the time, because first of all, I didn't even know if I was hearing God correctly. Second of all, I didn't know how I was going to be financially secure. Third of all, my parents were pretty hesitant about the decisions I was making, especially when getting an apartment for the first time on my own, going to school without actually having a secure job. So they weren't really for it at all. I'm pretty sure they were against it, but I don't entirely remember their reactions. I just know that I took into consideration what they said, but at the same time, I ignored everything that they said because I wanted to follow God and God only, which is why I put all my faith and all my trust in Him. And to me, that's a pretty big move to do, especially when parents care for me. I know they want me to make sure that everything works out. I know they want to make sure that what's best for me is best. And in the situation, they didn't see a financial way out. They didn't see how I was going to be able to afford any of this because they weren't helping me at all. This was all on my own. But I don't know. It was a lot of back and forth. And eventually I just did what God told me to do. Exactly the same way I did what God told me to do about getting the car, and I got the car. So I was like, you know what? If God can do it for my car, He can do it for my apartment. And I was like, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how it's going to get paid for, but it is what it is. So I just want to state out that I used to be a planner, and this was definitely unplanned because I was kind of just going with the flow. And typically when you're with God, you go with the flow. Nothing's really planned unless He gives you the strategy to plan ahead. But in this moment, I was kind of just going with what I was hearing and trusting that God's got it. But anywho, let's get back to the story. So now that I've secured my own apartment, I'm now trusting God on how it's going to get paid. I had no clue what I was doing at this point. All I knew is that I moved into a beautiful apartment that was way out of my budget at $1,120. I also had to pay for a parking garage, which is $178 a month. So in total, just for my apartment and parking garage, it's $1,298. You hear that number? That's for like a college student, and to me, that's a lot. Anywho, on top of that, I also had to pay for my car, which is $370 a month. So yeah, I'm speechless right now, but I know God's got me. With the money I had saved up, I had enough for everything for the first 2 or 3 months. After that, I had no clue how the rest was going to get paid. Now you may be thinking, why aren't you working? To answer that, God said not to, and to do Instacart or DoorDash instead. Why, you ask? Well, I had no clue why until a little later. The first month goes by and everything is good and paid for. The second month went by, and that's when my first big lesson came and I made a mistake. What happened was, I was trying to sell my Apple Watch to get some extra money. I posted this listing on Poshmark and Facebook Marketplace, which is something I've never used before. As you all may know, there are lots of scammers when it comes to Facebook. At that time, I knew that, but I didn't know how to watch out for them at all. In summary, I thought that the person I was going to sell my Apple Watch to was legit, so I ended up losing $1,300. Now, this is at the point where my bank account now says $1,000 or under. I can't fully remember how much I had left in my bank account, but anyways, to understand how I got scammed, if I remember correctly, basically, I did everything and I took as much precaution as I could. Obviously not enough because I lost $1,300. But basically I took photos of my Apple Watch and I posted it on Facebook Marketplace. And I remember getting all these Facebook DMs or messages or whatever you want to call it. I got a bunch of them, and I thought this person specifically was legit because they were asking the right questions. And when I asked God, is this the person I'm supposed to tell to? I didn't hear anything at the time, so I don't know. I just felt like to go with it because like what could happen? Obviously, I didn't think I could lose $1,300, but basically what this person was saying was to pretty much they were telling me to send them money. I know. You're probably like, well, first of all, if someone tells you to send them money, you don't send them money. Okay, yes, I get that now. But at that time, I was in my head about like, oh my gosh, I need to figure out how to get money. I need to figure out how I'm going to get money to pay all my bills. Like, it was just a lot going on. And so in my head, I was just like, I need money. I will do anything to get more money. And so what they did is I told them I take Zelle or Venmo, and they were like, I can't do either. Can you do Cash App? And I was like, first of all, that was the first red flag, but I ignored it because I remember my mom telling me that Cash App is typically how scammers typically use Cash App compared to any other like apps that deal with like transferring money. So that was the first red flag that I ignored because I was like, no, like, yeah, but whatever, if that's the only way, then that's the only way. And so then I downloaded the app, I made an account, and I told them how much to give me. And then what they replied back was an email saying like, hey, I tried to send you money, but the money's not going to go through. It's saying some like tax thing you have to pay. Can you pay it? And I think it was like $500 that I needed to send for them to be able to send me my money. So I was too scared to text my parents, so I texted my aunt instead. And I was like, I sent her the whole all the messages, and I sent her the email, and I was like, is this like legit? Like, what do I do? Like, do I actually send the money? Is this a real thing? Like, I don't understand. And she thought I was supposed to, so she was like, go ahead and send it. And I was like, okay. So, but at this moment, I'm still not feeling right about it, but I do it anyways because I got confirmation from my aunt to send it. So I sent it, and then they sent me another email saying like something else needed to be paid, and it was like another $800. And I sent my aunt again, and I was like, this is not right. They're asking for more money. And she was like, oh my gosh, this is a scam. And I was like, you're kidding. And she took a little bit to answer, and I was like in a hurry, in a rush. I was like, come on, like I need an answer like soon, but I was being impatient. I wasn't waiting on anything. I didn't even ask God for clarification. And I sent the $800, and then they sent another one asking for more. And I was like, that's when it occurred. I was like, okay, this is a scam. I got scammed and I lost $1,300. So yeah, that's a little backstory on how I got scammed. So I learned my lesson and will not do that. Thankfully, I was able to get my Apple Watch back too, because I sent it to the address that they gave me, but thankfully I was able to stop it in time to where it wasn't get sent, so I got my Apple Watch back. But I did not get my money back, and now it left me broke. So that was a hard moment for getting scammed for me, and I didn't think that could happen to me, and I kind of like spiraled down from there. So that was the first part of the story where I kind of spiraled down, where things just started to go downhill. So I told you a story about the scam, and then eventually I ended up telling my parents what happened and asking them for help and what I should do and blah blah, the situation I am. And after getting scammed and then talking to my parents, it was so stressful that it put me in a state of mind I never thought I'd be in. I was upset with myself. I hated myself. I was very angry that I fell for the scammer and made a huge mistake that actually affected me big time. I didn't know how I was going to pay my rent. I only had enough to pay for my car and use my credit cards to pay for everything else. No one who saw me in person knew this was happening to me because I always put on a front of being happy. But when it came to coming home, I cried myself to sleep multiple times. I lost faith. I doubted. I worried, wasn't sure if I was hearing God correctly, and I just wanted to give up. I wanted to give up to where suicidal thoughts started coming in. And then one day, my aunt mentioned these COVID-19 rent relief programs that I could apply to. So I did my research and asked God which ones to apply to, and I did so. And this is when God needed me to trust and believe that He would take care of the rest of my rent, and I would be living rent-free. Of course, at the time, I had so little faith and didn't think it'd be possible, but God could remind me of how anything is possible and to remember what He did for my car. With these programs that help renters, it does take a long time because it is a very long process, which means lots of waiting, and it was one of God's many lessons for me. Some days I kept my head up high, and other days not so much. I continued doing my studies at school and door dashing as much as I could to get some more income flowing in. It was a lot of work at first, but in order to get groceries, pay for gas, and pay for my car, I needed to work. Thankfully, my landlord was nice and understood my situation, and she knows the process of these programs. Each month from the program I applied to, I got declined. I was worrying, but I just heard to keep reapplying. I didn't know how much longer I could hold onto my faith in God because there were times when I asked myself if God was even real. That's when I knew this was the enemy talking. He's using my situation and finances to bring me down. I was at a point where my bank account was in the negatives and I didn't know what to do. Then God showed me a program at my school that actually helps students like me, and they reward you $500. I was so thankful to have received this because I had no clue how I was going to eat. Basically, at this point, I was a broke college student living a luxurious life on $500. I say luxurious life because I lived in a modern apartment in the city. With this reward I was given, it gave me a little more faith, and I started worshiping God more, reading my Bible more, and really just doing my best to lean on God. As I waited for the program, I finally received an email asking for a checklist of documents they requested. I went ahead and did as asked. Then a week later, I got accepted. This was right before my birthday too. I prayed to God each night of December that the only gift I asked for was for my apartment to be paid off. Then I received the email and was rewarded $5,572.26, which paid for the first half of my rent. I was in awe because even though I doubted God, He still showed me that I am His daughter and that He will always be there to provide for me. Now it's 2022 and I still have the other half of my rent that I need to pay. But I did make a mistake in December. I applied to 2 programs to help me, and they both accepted at pretty much the same time. The part where I made a mistake was that I did not follow up with the other program because then I started worrying about whether or not my landlord would have accepted it and if that program would actually help me since I worked with another program. Basically, I worried too much and I did what I thought was best and not what God said. My number one mistake was being disobedient. Again, I was upset with myself. I tried handling things myself. I doubted and I worried. Everything for my rent was clear until March, and that's when I needed to figure it out again. My other mistake was thinking I needed to figure it out when really I needed to let go and give it to God and ask Him for the strategies needed. So I was door dashing one day and I thought I was delivering to a restaurant with the order I had, but it ended up being that I actually needed to pick up an order from this place, and that made the employee and I both laugh to where he asked if I needed a job. The funny thing is, God recently told me at the time to stop door dashing and to find a job. I took it to God and went back and forth, and He told me to take it. I went in for my interview and got hired. Although I didn't get paid the amount I was hoping for, God said not to worry about it and to just do it. Little did I know that while working here, God was using me to help the employees and the owner. Not only was I there for a purpose, but He gave me a strategy on how to pay off my credit cards that I had built up being financially burdened. I was in awe of how awesome God is, but I also kept asking how my rent was going to get paid because this was not close enough. As always, He said not to worry. Again, I am so thankful to my landlord for being so patient with me, but it came to a point where I got a 3-day notice on the second to last month of my lease. I started freaking out and went to the program's office in person to tell them of my situation. Both offices said they could not do anything to move up the applicants, so I had to wait. Although I was freaking out, I also felt like everything was going to be okay. And when I say that I felt everything was going to be okay, like, I don't know, I just felt some sort of peace in this chaotic situation. Like, I just felt God and knew that He was going to take care of it. So going back to the story, I applied to the other program again. My landlord told me I have until August 12th to pay my rent or I will be evicted. I told her, not a problem. Then I went to God and I was like, what do I do? He said, wait. And now I have to wait and trust in God. Of course, my favorite word from God is wait. He did it before and I know He'll do it again. It is now August 9th and I still have no answer from either program. I asked God what to do and He said to just pay it because when I do get accepted by the program, they can pay for the future months for me. The fact that I had enough after working so much to pay my late rent was awesome. But if I did that, I'd be back to square one again. I didn't let that stop me, so I was obedient to God and did as I was told on August 10th. I opened my rent portal and put in my card information. After I hit submit, it said there was an error and I couldn't log back in. I called the leasing office and apparently management just changed, so they're getting things settled. They told me things would be up and running in 1 to 2 days, and the second day was the 12th day, which is the day I'm supposed to be evicted. Once that second day came around, that was the day the program accepted me and rewarded me $8,240, which is double than the other program I applied to, and accepted me in December. When I tell you I was in shock, I was in awe. I was so shocked, but I knew that it was coming. I just didn't know what was coming. All in all, I didn't tell you all the situations God had me go through, but when I tell you I went through a lot during this process, trust me, I did. I went from having enough money to getting scammed to being in the negatives, then to having more than enough. I am so thankful, and just to see my own growth from last August of 2021 to this August in 2022 was amazing. I learned the hard way of trusting God. If I didn't go through what I went through, I wouldn't know how to trust in God. I wouldn't have learned these lessons the way I did, and I'm thanking God for these experiences every day. Yeah, the situations I went through were terrible, leaving me on the edge of my seat, but it was well worth it. The fact that I literally had $100 or less in my bank account, even in the negatives, but was still able to eat, have a roof over my head, and pay for my car and gas is mind-boggling. I don't know how that's possible, but it is when you have God. God is my provider, and He will always be. He keeps elevating me each season, and He continues to fill me with knowledge every day, and it's amazing. It truly is. From now on, I will actually trust God with all my heart, because if He can pull this off, who knows what else He can do. All I have to say is that, yeah, I told you my story, but when you build your relationship with God and actually get to know Him one-on-one, your life is going to change. I have no clue how I came up with a word to try to tell you my story, because that's not even half of what has happened that past year. There are no words to describe God's glory. The only way to discover it is for you to give it a try for yourself. In Matthew 6:26, it says, "Look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they? As you can see, that year was something, and if you ask me how, all I can say is God. That's how. That year, God needed me to depend on Him, and He put me in these situations so that I can learn and trust to depend on Him because He always had my back. Again, He made a way when I didn't see one. If you asked me would I do it all again, I would say yes in a heartbeat because I know I could trust God. But again, that's also because I know what the outcome is. Like I said in previous episodes, if you know what the outcome actually is, of course you would do it again and trust God. But that's just not how things work. He needs you to really trust in Him and have really crazy faith for Him without knowing what's next. So have faith in God in whatever situation you're in because it's all going to work this time. I wasn't sure how this episode was going to go. I didn't know what I was going to talk about. I didn't even want to record this episode. So hopefully everything I said makes sense. But yeah, I remember 2021 like it was yesterday. It doesn't even feel like it was that long ago, but that was 3 years ago, and that's wild to see the journey that I had with God then and the journey I have with Him now. It's completely different. That year of getting my own apartment for the first time, getting scammed, barely being able to eat. I would literally limit my groceries. So I thank God for helping me through that situation. But yeah, a lot happened that year that I was on the edge of my seat every day trying to figure out how things were going to get paid, how I was going to get fed, what was going to happen to me. It was wild. But that's also the year where a lot of suicidal thoughts came up, and I didn't want to ask anyone for help but God. All right. Well, a reminder, it's all going to work this time. This time is going to work out. This time is going to work out. Anywho, that is all for this episode. Hopefully this episode makes sense. Hopefully you take something away and trust in God. Have a blessed day.